Okay, here we go.
Listo. Here
Sunday
we go.
leftovers.
1, 2, 3.
2, 3.
We're so dumb. We're so dumb. Man, who needs to be who needs Broadway when you can just be entertained with stupid things like that? Hey folks, welcome to Sunday Leftovers, coming to you from radio. We're gonna try radio. Was here for a series of meetings today.
And welcome to Sunday leftovers from Tomé, the south of the planet Earth.
Right. If you go any further south, you start going north, right?
Right.
And then you bump in. Then you bump into something we call pingüinos.
Pingüinos. That's right.
Anywho, here we are, Sunday leftovers on a Tuesday. It's good to join you guys again. We're going to try to make this work distance. Let us know if you appreciate it. If it's not a big deal, we can do something else with our time, but we're always happy to join you here. So Caesar and I were talking some interesting feedback from Sunday. All positive, no worries. Don't be, nothing dramatic. Just, I think that, and I said this Sunday, I don't tend to think or speak super practically. I kind of hover at this 50,000 foot elevation, right, where conversations are more generalized and we're thinking more philosophically. But it is actually a good thing once in a while to slow down and have some practical conversations about how we do live as the people of Jesus in the world. And so I got some feedback from the sort of people who just appreciate this kind of practical thing. It turns out it matters to folks how their church views the sacraments, because these are the reasons why many of us act poorly to our neighbors or act bad to our family members, because we have different views on these things. So I don't think anything brings me more pride as a local pastor than talking about how our posture towards these things is ecumenical and open and generous, and we're just simply not willing to look at these things as reasons to fight. So Caesar, you were telling me something that's going on with Amor Original as well, around this practical stuff.
Yeah, as soon as you told me that this was something necessary for the community, immediately I told you, it's the same with Amor Original right now. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I go in a direction like it's very maybe controversial sometimes. And for me, there's seasons when I realize, okay, this community needs to talk about this, even though it's controversial, but there's other seasons that we need to go in a different direction when we talk about something practical and something that you can apply in the real world, like immediately during lunch the same day. So because communities for me is like organisms that are breathing. Sometimes we need to breathe in, sometimes we need to breathe out, and it's a good dynamic when we realize that this is needed in this community. So
I recognize that. One of the disadvantages we have, one of the disadvantages and similarities that you and I have, Caesar, is that we're both classically trained theologians, in the sense that our graduate degrees are in the sort of thing that not a lot of people think about. And so we kind of, if anything, need to be pulled down to the practical world. So this week, as we ramp up for baptisms on Sunday, the decisions we're making right now are things like how many pairs of shorts and t-shirts and extra towels to have on hand. And the reason we do that is because there will always be someone or someones who are on the fence about this, but the day of, they'll see how we do it and they'll be like, I want to do this. And some of the great stories of ANC over the years have been the people who have in the last minute decided, I'm going to do this. And so just to reiterate and prepare us for where we're going this week, we're going to tell some stories on Sunday. There won't be a formal sermon. It won't be a formal teaching. It's going to be a time when the community gathers around and observes what I'm arguing for, is an audience that God convenes, that God convokes or calls into presence for the purpose of a declaration that I think most of us are really craving to hear, but most of us take a whole lifetime to believe. And that declaration really is that you are acceptable to God, that you've been cleansed, that ongoing need to cleanse yourself or resolve your sinful situation, it's been handled. And so to some degree, we never outgrow our baptismal vows or the waters of baptism, because I think most of us struggle to believe that. Throughout our whole lifespan, it takes us an entire life sometimes to actually accept the declaration that we are God's child in whom God takes great pleasure. So that's what we're geared up for. And
we have the tendency of trying to create our own path, to build our own holiness, or whatever you want to call that. And especially during this month, the Pride month, there's a lot of people that they have been taught that they don't deserve God's love. And to be in a community like ANC, when we are affirming that people, not just this month, the entire year, I think that's very significant. I love it.
Yeah, it is significant. And I said something on Sunday, and Catherine afterwards sent me a text or an email or something like that. I said on Sunday how if you look at the social science numbers, it's very obvious that children who grow up as part of the LGBT community in churches are actually in a higher category of suicide rates than they would otherwise be.
Right.
And as sad as that is, Catherine brought to my attention, she says, but also kids who grow up in faith communities that affirm and celebrate them, that's much, much, much better. Those numbers are much, much better. And so what I probably should have said on Sunday was, while it's sad how many kids grow up in conservative spaces that don't allow for that, those that grow up in churches like the one that we are creating experience probably the most support for who they are as they discern that, and as we all do that, because we're all trying to figure out how to be in the world. And so I probably got a little overwhelmed with the sadness of the reality of the social science numbers without acknowledging how it is that what we're doing really matters, right? And so I think over the summer, part of what we're trying to argue, we're trying to articulate is why it still matters to do faith communities that are based on love, based on acceptance, based on belonging, to borrow Diana Butler Bass's terms, not based on the fact that we all coordinate our behavior in a way that makes us all seem like we believe the same things, but because we are all rock solid convinced that we belong to love. We were made for it, we come from it, and we're on our way back to it. So anyway, so this particular sermon last Sunday and what we're doing next week and the following week, which will be Father's Day, don't necessarily fit within the greater conversation of where to next, except that they do, because this is what we're talking about, the practical side of being a faith community. So,
one of the things that impacts me the most about baptisms is that, and also about religion, is in religion we screw things so easy. I mean, we transform something that is liberating in something to put people in cages. And at the beginning, when you read about John the Baptist baptizing other people, he called people, and you mentioned that also on Sunday, they call people to repentance and forgiveness. Repentance for their sins and forgiveness. Sometimes we don't realize that was a major scandal at the time, because the business of forgiveness was in the temple. The temple has their rituals to forgive sins. No other rituals. And so it's like forgiveness outside of the margins of religion. So eventually we took all of that. There was a liberation from religion, and we took it again into the religion and put all things around. So we again, we screw things with
Yeah, we screwed
with
it up.
our
Yeah.
yeah. And we need to
Yeah.
come back to that revolution. That means that the liberation, and that God is always acting outside of our structures and our, I don't know.
Yeah, no, yeah, and the thing is that churches would probably admit that God acts outside of our structures, but they would also simultaneously argue deeply that our sacraments are unique, and our sacraments are where God. I mean, even the way we define the word sacrament, it's a place where we can experience God's grace. Well, let me ask you this question: where is there a place where you can't? Right? So,
Yeah.
to some degree, if you follow my logic, which I don't recommend that everyone do, because you end up in this world where you essentially end up in this world where everything is God. Okay. So anyway, not to pull the heresy tassel here, but this question remains: where can you not experience the grace of God? Hey, I just lost volume. You there?
I'm here.
Okay, it came in and out. So here's a question for you. Is a forest a sacrament? Is the ocean a sacrament? Is the experience of vulnerably revealing your heart to someone you trust and experiencing sort of grace as a result of that, opening yourself to that kind of knowing, is that a sacrament? I would say, and this won't surprise any of you, I would say all of that is sacramental, because we can experience the grace of God in all those things.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not what you and I were taught in seminary. We were taught that there's 2 or 3, maybe 4 sacraments depending on your church tradition, right? There's the Eucharist, there's baptism, there's marriage, there's first rites or last rites, or first, those rites of passage. There aren't that many things, but I would argue the entire created order is sacramental, because you can experience God in all of those things. Now, that's not to say we walk away from the sacrament of baptism. Akshay and I this morning were talking about the value in preserving what very few things remain that we do, that we were told to do by Jesus. Very few things remain. So we don't jettison them or throw them out as if they don't matter. No. We innovate and we preserve. It's both
Right.
of those things.
Yeah.
We are perhaps much more adept at innovation than preservation. But remember, I'm not asking you to preserve a million things. We're talking about the Eucharist, baptism, right? So anyway, it's a
And
also
also
kind of a liberating thought. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are things that we are constantly rethinking, which is great. So we are preserving, but we are nurturing that tradition with new meaning that is relevant for this world, that is relevant for this generation, and that's great.
Right.
Is
The
a-
thing that I most ferociously preserve is the seeking of meaning itself, right? So not the conclusion of what we end up with. I can go back to the journals in my second decade of life, and I can isolate for you the things that carried all the meaning. And then I can tell you in my fifth decade of life, those things have changed. What remains the same, what is truly primary and apostolic, as I've suggested last Sunday in the sermon, things need to be in order to be trustworthy, or at least that's what the church has argued. What things remain all the way through is that to seek is to find, and to seek is to pursue. And so these things, baptism and the breaking of bread, are a little unique because the church has found them to be trustworthy over centuries. But all things are sacramental. All things are sacramental. Richard Rohr said, everything belongs, right?
Right.
That's his way. It's his theological treatise. So yeah, it's a fun time to be thinking through these sort of practical things. And so here's one thing that grieves me and brings me a little bit of sadness. And that is simply that for all of you out-of-towners who aren't in the city, this is going to be a bummer Sunday, because you won't experience it the way we're experiencing it. And for that, it's just the downside of a church that no longer only exists in a brick and mortar space. So I don't really know how we can share that experience with others. Maybe we'll drag a camera around, or I wish, Caesar, you still lived it here in Austin because we could just live stream it.
Right.
But how do you suggest we do that?
I suggest pick a nice iPhone, log in into ANC Facebook account, and just stream directly from the iPhone. I think that will preserve also that rawness, that being in that place, with the camera, like anybody will be in a public event.
Okay.
Maybe that's the simplest,
Right, because like
simplest
the perspective
way.
of,
Yeah, the simplest way to do that, maybe, because it's
Okay,
it's
well,
a way
we will
to
we will have
experience that.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, will be nice.
Yeah.
I think.
All right. Let's see if we can coordinate a fist bump to end this Sunday leftovers. Ready?
Ready.
But you're on a delay. This technology is over. 1, 2, 3. Sunday leftovers.
Boom.
Let's go do it like this.